The first time I ever volunteered with you, you walked me through how you were setting hides, and it was just a ton of fun. It was so educational. But the thing that I really took away more than that was it was just obvious how much you love the sport, and it's just infectious, and you just love doing it and talking about it and sharing it. And that's really what stuck with me.
Oh, thank you. That is very kind of you, and it's very nice to hear. I appreciate that.
Tell me more about that passion. What's that passion all about?
You have to understand, I competed in other dog sports before, and growing up, I was a competitive figure skater. So competition and competing and all of those things have been with me my entire life. But the thing about rally and obedience and agility, I love those sports. But for me, there were a lot of pressure. In nose work, scent work, whichever you call it, the dog leads the parade. And the thing that really turned it on for me was watching dogs use their natural ability to do something for us that comes natural to them and brings them joy. And also, if you do it right, and I don't mean by getting a cue every time, but if you do it right and you watch your dog doing what they love, it's an amazing feeling just all the way around. So that's what really got me hooked.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I sometimes get just mesmerized watching my dog. I forget what I'm doing. This is amazing what this animal's doing right now. They see this invisible world that we don't, and they're finding an object that we could never find in that room.
Well, unless it's cypress, and sometimes cypress takes over a whole room, but we can't pinpoint the source, right?
Clove, for whatever reason, is really what sticks out to my nose. So,
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, your energy is awesome. And I just know when the husky hauler pulls up to a solo trial, whether it's you're competing or you're judging, that you're going to be bringing a whole bunch of energy. And I can't wait to talk to you today. This is Alert Scent Work. My name's Scott, Murphy and Kiva's dad. And today my guest is Jinx's mom, Tracy Hill. How are you, Tracy?
I'm awesome, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Take me back to the very beginning of that scent work journey. What is your origin story? How did you end up in this sport?
I was thinking about that as I was walking said husky this morning. And for those of you who don't know me, I have Four Paws Dog Works in Richland, Washington. It's a training center that my husband and I built from the ground up. And in 2015, I had a woman by the name of Karen Shivers, who some of you probably know. She started the UKC sport of nose work, along with others. We happened to have a mutual friend who hooked us up. And she came out to my place and did a workshop weekend for us. And at that time, I had my half husky, Jake, and my little lab, who is still with us, Molly. And that got me hooked. And then a few months later, I started teaching introductory classes. And then I started getting other people said, hey, we should have competitions, trials here at Four Paws. And I'm like, okay. Wonder how we do that. And with the help of a lot of other judges and other people who had been involved with the sport much longer than I had, we did get started. And back in the day with UKC, you had to have what were called pre-trials, which is kind of like NACSW ORTs. Mm-hmm. And the dogs had to pass all 5 odors in order to be able to get it was a PT title at that time. So we started small with our club, and that's how we got started. And my half husky and I, and then Molly, my little lab back here, just kept going and going and going.
Take me through what was going through your mind when you first saw about this class with Karen Shivers, that you could bring this to your dog training facility.
Yes.
Were you like, hey, this is interesting, or I've never heard of this, let's try it? Like, what was that emotional thing going on?
Met Karen, like I said, through a mutual friend. And she is actually also very infectious, right? And that's in a good way. We started doing just the basics, right, of hunting for food and doing all the things, and just watching all of these teams and all of these people just getting into something that was completely foreign, frankly, to all of us, and all of us learning together and coming up together. That bonded a bunch of us from the beginning at my facility. And they said, you're going to continue with classes, right? I'm like, sure.
Right.
I have no idea. I mean, not no idea, but I have very little idea. I know all about dog training and teaching and those kinds of things, but how do we do this, right? And so then I had other practitioners come in and do workshops and things. And that's really kind of how it started.
What does scent work and judging scent work or participating in scent work give you personally that just kind of makes you keep showing up, traveling, and pouring so much energy and money into this sport?
There's a lot of reasons. One is just the love of watching teams work, right? And watching dogs work. It's fascinating to me. The science behind it, the behavior behind it is fascinating to me. But I tell my students all the time, when you enter a competition, most people are super nervous, right? And I get it. Some people didn't grow up like I did in a competitive sport or never even played a team sport. That's the other thing that I think is so cool about this. There are people who have never competed in a thing a day in their lives, but they have now entered nose work for whatever reason, and it's their first competition, and they're nervous, and you make a lot of mistakes. Your first few competitions and your first few dogs, but you learn from them. But the thing is, I tell people nervousness and excitement feel exactly the same way in your gut. It's your response to it that makes the difference, whether it's nerves or whether it's excitement.
Yeah, I can tell you were a figure skater. You have to you had to get that mental game down, right? Like, all athletes have to
Yeah,
manage that nervousness, and that's the way I've heard it framed that way a lot, that it's just
yeah,
excitement, and you just need to interpret it as such. Or you need to interpret the nervousness as a good thing because that means you wanna do a good job.
that's a great point. When I was a figure skater, I was a singles skater. I wasn't involved in pairs or dance. So the difference for me was not only now do I have a partner, but we don't even speak the same language.
Right?
And they are much more sensitive to things going on inside us than we realize or than we respect. And I say respect because whatever we feel goes down that leash and into the collar or harness. And if we are nervous, they're going to be like, what? This is not the same person that's normally on the other end of the leash. What's happening? Right.
Right, right.
And so, in all honesty, when I first started competing, and before I started judging, I was that nervous person. I should have known better, right? But but over time, you just learn. And now, when I step up to the line, I'm like, this is amazing. I want to see what our team can do.
I love
And
that. I look forward to getting to that stage myself.
okay, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, and it may be stealing some of what you wanted to ask me later. But when you have a really really sick dog and you can't do the things because they're sick, it makes you appreciate so much more being able to go to the line with that dog again.
Right. Every time you
So
step that line is a gift.
it is. It is. And you've seen the tattoo that I have on my inside wrist, right? It's a heart around a dog paw. And I look at that every time I step to the line and I remember that's what it's about. It's the love of the dog, it's their love for you, and it's the love of doing something so cool together because they wouldn't do this on their own. They wouldn't say, "All right, let's get my harness on."
Yep. Let me find some birch. I just really gotta find some birch.
Yeah, I'm feeling the birchie today. So,
Right.
yeah.
All right, so if
Yeah.
I'm hearing this right, scent work, you like the competition aspect of it, which is something that's been ingrained in you. You love this aspect of going up there with this animal that you love that and watching them do these amazing things.
Yep.
Are there other things did I miss anything that just you love about the sport?
Well, I love all the things about the sport. I mean, I really like sharing knowledge with people, right?
Yeah.
And being able to set up tests for them, for their dogs that are level appropriate, and to get them to maybe learn something that they didn't about their team. I have another mentor, uh, at Michael McManus, who came out to do a seminar, a workshop weekend with us the day that I brought Jinx home when he was 10 weeks old. But Michael told me something that has stuck with me all of these years, and Jinx is now 6. He said, "You're not a real nosework person until you've heard 1,000 no's." I do learn a lot more from my no's than I ever do from my yeses. The yeses are easy. You're like, this was great. Everything was clicking. We were in sync. It was lovely. And you get a no. And it used to be that I would drive home, right? 4 hours from a trial. Like, what happened?
Mhm, mhm, sounds familiar.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening can relate to that. And then now when I do that, I give myself an hour perhaps to wallow. And then after that, I make a training plan. Okay, what was the gap in our training that we missed?
Yeah.
But frankly, the no's keep me coming back to
Yeah,
compete.
yeah. Let me add one more thing. I'm sure you do this, but it took me a while to also on that 4-hour drive home, other than beating myself up and then finally decide, designing the training plan to also celebrate what went well. Like, what did we
Oh
do
yeah.
well? And
Oh yeah.
that's hard for us as humans to do sometimes. Like, what were we excited about? And just really, even if you have to pick the smallest things.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know that we follow each other on social media, and so you will see me post a lot of times about the things, the weekends that didn't go well. No cues, but here's what did happen, right? We solidified this. We were able to clear that room. We made it to room two, right, or whatever that looks like. And those things should not be taken for granted, because if you've been chasing something for a while and then you finally get, break it down into smaller milestones. If I can just get into room two, that's going to be a success, right? And then if I can get into room three, holy cow.
What you just said also made me think about this idea that when we step to the start line, it's not just a singular thing of dog finds hide, you call alert, you get it right. Like, there are so many steps and so many things that have to happen especially when you move up in levels, right? There are so many pieces to that puzzle to finding that final odor. So even being able to break it down and say, hey, the dog really recognized and tried to bracket and they didn't source it, but boy, they bracketed it really nicely.
Yes.
I,
Yeah.
I think we can oversimplify what this thing is and forget about all those complicated steps. And sometimes that's where you find your successes. Is there were some things in that search that went well, even if you didn't find a hide or didn't get the cue.
Right. I mean, like, one of the things is that I know make a lot of people nervous is when they get that 30-second notification, right? 30 seconds. And it used to be my body's response was clench, right?
Right.
And now my response to 30 seconds is, where haven't we been? If the dog is not working, if the dog is not giving me any changes of behavior in the area where I am when I hear 30 seconds, I go, okay, where did he last show a change of behavior, or she for that matter, either dog? Where did they show that change of behavior that I don't feel like we covered that area properly? And I'll take them back. And if I see some changes of behavior in that area, then that validates for me that, had I had another 30 seconds on top of that 30 seconds, we might have been able to do that. But that's okay. I'll go work on some speed drills at home and see if we can tighten that up a little bit.
Right. And even just celebrate the recognizing when 30 seconds came that you're like, okay, where haven't we been? The fact that that even is part of your thought process, because at some point it's not. Like,
Yeah.
that has to develop into your thought process. So sometimes I would celebrate that 30 seconds. All right. What do I do now? What do I do now? What do I do now? Oh, that's right. I wanted to go where we haven't been. That's
Yeah.
a win.
It
If you've
is a
never
win.
if you've never even thought that thought before, that is a win. So
Absolutely. And I don't think we give ourselves, the human end of the leash, as much credit. I think we tend to denigrate ourselves. It's all our fault. Well, so, 90% of the time it probably is. But, some of that time, like I said, when Jinx was really sick, he couldn't. He just couldn't, right? And so I needed to give some grace to both of us on those days where one of us or both of us were off.
yeah. I want to talk about judging a little bit. You said something about one of the things that you love about it is setting tests for competitors, right?
Right.
And you mentioned in that you like to create searches that are fair but still challenging to the level, which all judges try to do.
Yeah.
But there's also the other aspect of it. There's the aspect of, was it fun? Was it unique? To me, I personally like searches where there's a hide that works in a place that I never would have thought of, but my dog found it, right? So
Right.
there's those two components, fair and challenging, and also experience for the teams. Talk me through your mindset when you're setting a search, and let's start with that experience for the team. What do you want the team to experience when they step into the space you've designed?
The main thing I want them to experience is fun. And that's probably on the end when they leave, right? I'm like, okay, if it's fun to me, I'm hopeful that it's fun to the competitor, right?
Mhm.
And I think when and of course containers and buried are completely different, right? Because we have prescripted ways that we need to set those up for the most part, right? But interiors and exteriors and detective are places where we can really be creative. And I think sometimes, way back when people were learning the sport, I think sometimes the tests that people set up inadvertently were just much more difficult than they thought they would be. And so when I look at a space, I think, okay, what's going to happen if the environmental factors change in this room? Like, the air conditioning comes on and it
Mhm.
changes the airflow or outside. You start with a sunny day when you set the hides, and by the time competitor 24 runs, it's pouring rain and 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Yep, and I would say most of our listeners understand that these environmental things change how odor behaves, but I wanna drop that in case we've got somebody new listening.
Yeah.
Like sun, shade, humid, not humid, all changes how odor behaves and how the dogs sense it. So these are things that we as competitors and judges have to think about all the time. So there's for the newbies, there's a whole bunch of other stuff to terrify you.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing to consider is, for example, I live in Eastern Washington. It's pretty dry here for the most part. So those are the conditions that my dogs train under. We go to the west side or, wherever it is that we go where it's more humid, completely different odor picture.
Right, and these are odor pictures your dogs haven't necessarily seen as much, so it takes them a little while
Correct.
to suss them out.
So back to your original question, what do I look at? I look at the space that I have, and competitors also need to understand that sometimes when we get to a space that we're assigned, it maybe is not optimal, and that's not anybody's fault, right? It just is. And so then you need to think, okay, in this space, what is going to be the best possible challenge that I can set? And best not meaning hardest, best meaning, best that I can set for this space that makes it challenging but doable for dogs who have trained for those sorts of things and fun. And so I think we have to remember that it's not it shouldn't and I'm not going to say that I haven't been there. You're not going to say you haven't been there. It's disappointing, right? If you don't get it. But at the end of the day, you got to spend time with this creature who adores you. And you got to see a lot of people that maybe you haven't seen in a while, or you made some new friends. And really, I want it to be an experience, right?
Right, it's entertainment, just like any other entertainment, right? So
Correct.
I like that mindset.
Yeah.
When you talk about creating searches that are fair but still challenging, for those that you don't know, there is a judge's guidelines, which you've got the rules and then you got the judge's guidelines, and you should read the judge's guidelines if you're a competitor because they really do very specifically outline what's expected in novice, advanced, excellent, and master, and even
Yep.
detective. When you judge, a lot of times judges at morning briefing get a little moment to talk, right? And a lot of times in that quick moment, judges will give a little advice like don't crowd the start line or whatever. Now, let's pretend you're at the morning briefing and they're like, "All right, you've got 5 minutes actually to give these people some tips at different stages." So, what would you at that point tell novice and advanced teams? And then my second question, what would you say differently to more experienced like excellent master detective teams? And this is based on all the things you've seen as a judge. Like, what's the advice that you think could really help an advanced or a novice team?
Breathe.
That's a good one. Yep, yep,
I
I've
mean,
heard that before.
yeah, seriously. I mean, you can just see the looks on these people's faces sometimes, especially if they're new to any kind of dog sports and competing at all, right? They're literally holding their breath, right? And I so breathing is one, enjoying the journey. I do, and you've been in enough briefings with me, Scott, to know that a lot of times I will hold up my arm with my tattoo and say, "Look, this is what it's all about in the end. Enjoy
Right.
the time with your dog because they are not here nearly as long as they should be."
You're one of those judges that, usually gets the competitors crying first thing. I bet you've
Yeah.
done it, and there's a couple of other judges that I've heard this similar story, right? And the conclusion that is always made is, maybe sometimes we take this too seriously. We should just really try to have fun with it and just really treat this as the blessing that it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, you go home with the best boy or the best girl.
I wanna before you move on, novice and advanced, what would be a couple of little training tips? You're a trainer and a judge and a competitor. What would be a couple of training tips that you would give people?
First off, I would suggest if you are not training with an actual trainer somehow, whether that be online or in person, I would suggest trying to do that because it is harder to do it on your own. That being said, I highly recommend videoing every practice search you do and going back and actually watching those videos and watching for your dog's changes of behavior because that's going to be your precursor to their final alert.
Yeah, that's great advice because I don't think as when I first started, I didn't even realize that was a thing. It wasn't until I found myself an excellent master and people were like, "Read your dog." I'm like, "What's that?" I just tell my dog to go find it and he goes finds it. I didn't what? Read my what?
Yeah.
So I think the earlier you can start just observing, just watching the dog and noticing the little changes that they have when all of a sudden they catch a whiff of odor, or how do they narrow down exactly where it is. I think that's so invaluable, and if you could start doing that earlier, your life's gonna be so much easier when you move up.
And when you move up, don't forget about going back to those fundamentals and doing fundamental exercises. Sometimes doing one and dones just keep the excitement for the dog, right? You mean what? Wait, but I want to do more. Nope, all it is today is a one and done. I'd rather have the but I than not this again, right?
Yeah, I've gotta find 6 hides with 3 of them converging and 1 higher than I've ever
Yeah.
tried before. That's exhausting to a dog's brain, and that's
Oh,
stuff you should absolutely train, right? Maybe not all at once, quite
yeah,
frankly.
right. Yeah. If I'm being honest, yeah.
Yeah, but I love that. Leave them wanting more instead of having these long sessions. I think I'm starting to finally incorporate that better with my dogs.
Good for
Um,
you. Look at you. You can be taught.
I can be taught. I'm an old dog, and I'm learning those new tricks,
You
Tracy.
and you and me both, my friend.
You've alluded to this before with your dog Jinx, when you have when you have a sick dog. I think you were talking about Jinx when you were talking about that. And, every dog has their thing, and I think for you, working through this illness has been your dog's thing. Talk us through what it's like to try to adjust when your dog has a thing and you're trying to do scent work. What has helped you get through this time?
Yeah, so it does depend on the thing, right? Like
Right. And what's your dog do you mind saying what your dog's thing is?
he actually has what is called EPI, which is exocrine pancreatic insufficiency,
Mhm.
which means that his pancreas does not produce enough enzymes to properly digest his food, which results in horrible diarrhea and just general malaise. I mean, he lost 7 pounds. He couldn't keep anything in him. He was, I mean, it was awful. And so imagine if you had the flu and you were asked to go search and you tried and you tried and you tried. So what happened was before I realized he was sick, he was starting to slow down in his searching, and all of us thought, well, he's finally maturing, he's getting a little more methodical, the things, because when you see the dog every day, you don't see the slow progression into this horrible illness until they throw up blood on Christmas morning.
Yep, and that's pretty loud and clear at that point.
Yeah, at that point you're like, okay, something is clearly not right
Yeah.
here. So what that really taught me in working through that over the next few months, because he was on first of all, I should tell you, he was misdiagnosed and he was on all of these medicines that he did not need to be on, but we didn't know it. So what do you do, right? What that taught me was patience. And you and I haven't known each other all that long, but I'm not particularly good at the patience thing.
Okay.
And that's not to say that I wasn't patient with him, because obviously I was, but it's just hard when you see him, your teammate, suffering and still trying to do his best. And I still wanted to take him to work with me because I felt like being cloistered in the house all the time wasn't the right thing for him either, right? Because there's no mental stimulation at that point, but he just really couldn't muster enough to do any real good work. And then, but that did give me the opportunity to go back and do a lot of those one and done things, right? I would just ask him to go find a box with odor. There'd be 2 boxes out there. Just go find the one, buddy. Reward, 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 right? So I was able to take pretty close to a year to go back to fundamentals. And I didn't, I couldn't compete him in exteriors at all, because at one point during the misdiagnosis, he was on so much prednisone that he was peeing all the time. And it wasn't his fault. I would pee him before a search, but I watched him in one search. He was chasing the last odor, and suddenly he did a complete turnaround and went outside of the search area to pee. But that was still, we were still done, right? Because you can't pee during a search.
Yeah.
And it made me realize that I needed to give him the space and the grace to come back to me when he could. So, sorry. So,
No. No, don't be sorry.
so here we are, you
Yeah.
know.
and things are better now, right? I mean,
Things are, yeah.
it's manageable at least.
It is. The EPI is a condition that's completely manageable. We did have a little setback a couple Fridays ago. I have no idea what happened, but he's back. But now I've learned how to manage that wave of stuff, right?
Right.
And so yeah, so I mean, yeah, it's been interesting, and I've learned also not to panic every time a little blip occurs, and I think that's important for people to remember too. Even if your dog's not sick,
Right.
if you go through a year of not getting some, like, the last element that you need for your full whatever title, it's part of your journey. And you're going to look back on that once you get that elusive whatever it is. You're going to look back on that and go, wow, I really did learn a lot. I didn't think, time is the great perspective, right? You can look back on it and think, wow, we came through that and our team is stronger for it.
And I saw posted recently on Facebook that Jinx finally earned that elusive master exterior cue, and that was a year of chasing it.
It is. It was a year of chasing it. And yeah, and it was 89 degrees with like 8,000% humidity is what it felt like, right? But as you know, Scott, in Masters, AKC Masters, it's an unknown number of hides. And so you have to be right on your end of the leash too. Is my dog actually done working, right? And he found the hide, and I think I heard, I don't know if I heard 30 seconds or not. I may have, but I said finish, and Donna said yes, and I said, what? I'm not sure I heard you correctly.
I'm not used to that word correct or
Yeah,
yes.
yes, yeah, I'm not used to that, especially in this context, right?
Right.
So that was a lot of fun. That was a lot
Congratulations.
of fun.
How many NQs led to that cue?
More than two hands worth.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
That was you and Jinx overcame something. What were you
yeah.
feeling inside when it finally happened other than shock at first? What when the shock wore off, what were you thinking?
I'm going to tell you the exact words I said to Donna on my way out were, "Wow, we really can do this."
Oh.
Yeah,
Mm,
because you start doubting yourself, right? I mean, I'm a judge. And I think people need to hear that. That's the thing I think that sometimes not a lot of instructors will be willing, or judges will be willing to admit to their students. I fail too. And I don't mean fail in that respect, but I hear no a lot as well. And I'm going to come back here and tell you that I heard no this weekend. I was only 2 for 5 or whatever it was, right? Because I think that humanizes us.
yeah. I think
Um,
it could be very difficult. I would think it could be very difficult as a judge and a competitor because if people decide they want to watch. I asked Judge Lori Schlossnagel one time if I could watch her, and she laughed out loud. And I think the reason she laughed is, because of that tension of I don't know what you expect to see when you come in here.
yeah.
Because judges. I don't know. Help me flesh this out with how you feel about it. But just because you judge doesn't mean you're like this awesome competitor all the time. Like you have challenges just like any competitor does.
So my my first response to that is, are we not all humans?
Yes.
Are our dogs not all dogs?
Right.
And do we all have good and bad days? Absolutely. Do we as humans make bonehead decisions at the end of our leash? You betcha. And I think you've even asked me before. You've asked me before if you can watch my detective runs or whatever with Jinx.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, because you may see something that I don't,
Mm.
right? You can come up to me afterwards and say, "Hey, so," and not that you would ever do it and I wouldn't do it to you in a mean way either, but what happened in that interior? Why did you make the decision you made? And I'll be happy to tell you, and I'm going to ask you right back, what did you see?
Yeah.
Right?
That's cool. That's a healthy relationship with it right there. Probably hard to get to that point. Probably hard to, of course, you've been a dog trainer for a long time. You also are in competitive figure skating. You were getting feedback all the time. So maybe not as difficult for you as for other people.
Well, that's true on one hand, but on the other hand, we all have egos,
Yeah.
fragile or not, or overinflated, whether or not deserved. Right? I'm just going to say that and if you're riding a high, it's great. If you're riding a low, the last thing you want to hear is something negative. But and I'm not necessarily even negative, but the last thing you want to hear is more feedback, like you said. But if you can get out of your own way long enough to listen, you're going to learn a lot that you never thought you needed to know.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up with a thing I call 7 questions. It's quick fire. I'm gonna
Oh
ask
boy.
7 yeah, I'm gonna ask 7 questions, and I
You
just want
left
the
that off
first
the list.
I know I did.
Okay, go ahead.
And I just want you to just come up with the first thing that comes to your mind, and I'm looking for a sentence or 2. If I want you to expand, I'll have you expand on it, okay?
That's fair.
What is your dog's favorite reward after a great search?
Lots and lots and lots of food.
Okay, anything in particular?
For Jinx, he's on a specific diet, so whatever I have for him is what he gets. And for my lab, oh, it doesn't matter. The more, the merrier.
What's one piece of advice that you would give your beginner scent work self?
Oh, don't take it so seriously.
What would your dog say about you as a handler? And we're looking for good. And
Okay.
you can say the negative, but we're also looking for some good, okay? So either one is fine.
What would your repeat the question for me because I got to laughing and now I can't give
Yeah.
my initial response.
What would your dog say about you as a handler?
Sometimes you're a freaking idiot.
All right. What good would your dog say about you as a handler?
Um, Good. I love being with you and doing the thing.
All right. I think your dog would say, "Oh, I just love your passion for this. I love it too."
Oh, thank you. That's sweet.
What's your favorite search to run your dog in?
Oh, I know a lot of people are going to think I'm weird. I actually like buried.
Okay, why? Tell us why. Tell us why. What's
Well,
wrong with
okay,
you?
okay, yeah, I know, right? I'll tell you. I'll tell you exactly why. I chased advanced buried for probably 8 or 9 trials. We just couldn't get it. And once we finally got it, he's like, "Okay, now I get it." And then we just flew through, and I got his master buried title in, well, it takes 3 Qs. I got it in 3 trials.
What's one compliment from a fellow competitor or a judge that really stuck with you? So, as a judge, did a competitor give you a compliment, or as a competitor, did the judge give you a compliment? And this just really sticks with you. You think about it a lot.
Sure. As a From competitors to me when I'm judging, I've had a lot of people say that was the most fun I've ever had
Mm,
in a search, and that's overwhelming to me. I think that's amazing. And a corollary to that is I'll be seeking you out to I'll be stalking you to where you're judging. So that's very cool.
you've had people say that to you. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. One of the things that I've had people say, or judges say, when we're on, right? Not during that time period when it was just horrible. I really can see the teamwork and the love between you two.
That's good.
Yeah.
What has your dog done in a search that made you laugh?
So many things. Um, I I say 2 things about him. One is if you want to use him as a demo dog, he will show you every potential pitfall in your search because he is if he fits, he sits. So he will push through and bull through things that the easiest way to find it is not the Jinx way to find it.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you have a signature distractor that you use in your searches? Something that you kind of bring with you to a lot of different trials?
Yes, her name is Ducky.
Okay. Tell us about Ducky.
Ducky is literally a decoy duck that hunters use.
And why Ducky? Why is that your signature? Why do you love Ducky so much?
Well, I can only use her at the upper levels, right?
Right, because
Because
it's a mimic.
yeah, because it's a mimic, and there are usually 2 reactions that dogs give to her. And I try not to put her, well, in Masters or Detective. I've put her at the start line staring at the dog, but they either will go up and sniff her and look at their handler with this, just like, what is this doing here? It's not real. Why is it here? Or I've had a couple of dogs that stalk up to it, like very slowly, and then wondering if it's real. And then when they realize it's not, they're like, "Oh, what was I worried about?" And then off they go.
Got it. So if people have hunting dogs, they
Yes, good luck.
they need to watch out for Tracy Hill and Ducky. You better train it,
Yeah.
I think is what she's saying. That's gonna show up.
Yep.
Tracy, Jinx is sitting there, ears up, waiting for a search. What's the one thing you'd want him or any dog to know about why we humans love this game so much?
Oh. because it deepens our bond.
I love it. It does.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely
If you're
does.
doing it right, it does. Yep.
I love that. What a great answer. What a great way to end.
Thank you.
Tracy, thank you. You can find Tracy you're kind of in the east central part of the state of Washington.
Eastern Washington.
Eastern Washington. I see you judge a lot in Oregon and Washington, and you get to Idaho once in a while. You get to Utah once in a while.
Yep.
So,
and I'm willing to go anywhere.
Okay. So if you're looking for a judge and you're digging Tracy's vibe, you can find her information. I'll put your email here on the show notes, but you can also find it at the AKC Judges Directory. And she'll pack up the Husky Hauler, which is her camper, and she'll head on out to your trial and get it done for you. So thank you so much, Tracy. You can find all of our episodes for Alerts Network at alertsnetwork.com. You can also follow along at Facebook, facebook.com/alertsnetwork. And I'd also love to hear from you. Send me an email, hello@alertsnetwork.com. If you have judges you'd like to hear on the podcast, or maybe share your own Scentwork stories, or just let me know what you're enjoying about the show. Tracy, thanks again for joining me today and everything you do to make this sport just such a great experience. I meant it when I said you bring the enthusiasm. So thank you so much for making it happen.
Scott, it's been a pleasure.